Hello, I'm Reverend Rick, and it is my honor to be with you today. We really hope that this video is a blessing to you. And if it is, please consider making a donation. People watch our videos locally when they cannot necessarily come to church throughout the United States and the world. So please join us and click the link below and make a donation. Thank you, and let this be a blessing to you. The spiritual truth this morning that I am dealing with is this. It comes from the Declaration of Principles of Science of Mind. It says that we believe in the direct revelation of truth through the intuitive and spiritual nature of the individual. There is something in each one of us that lets us know when we hear truth. The title of this message is The Deception of Good Enough. And my question here is this: is good enough all you want? Or do you want a great life? But good enough is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But there is a possibility for more. Jim Collins in the book Good to Great said, the only threat to greatness is being good. So can you open up your mind this morning to the possibility, to the infinite potential, and remove the self-imposed limitations that you have placed on your own life? See, we do have to unlearn some of the things that we have been taught, or the messages that we interpreted, not necessarily in the most healthy way. The last time I was here, I introduced you to Dr. Reverend Johnnie Colemon, one of my heroes and my idols. And I'm going to address another one of her books this morning, and it's called Open Your Mind and Be Healed. In the preface of this book, it is written by Della Reese, Reverend Dr. Della Reese. Della Reese starts out and says she grew up in Detroit, in Black Bottom. Many of you know I grew up in Detroit. I don't know anything about Black Bottom, but there was a place and there was a location. And I think her point was to share with us that she came from simple means. By the time she was 13, she was singing background for Mahalia Jackson. But she tells the story, she says, I hated Mahalia. And this is why. She said, because my mother told her, treat her as if she is your own daughter. And so she said she really treated me like I was her daughter. And so Della says she would sing going down the aisle and she'd hit a high note, and Mahalia would not even get out of her seat. And Mahalia would sit there and she'd get a microphone when she was done, and she'd go, soon we'll be done. And she said people would fall out of the balcony. She said, how can she be so cool? And people fall out of the balcony. So she said she hated it. But Della achieved some unbelievable things. This is the 1950s, right? Della had 10 movies completed, 27 for television. She recorded 27 albums, and she was the first African-American woman talk show host. She was. She covered for Johnny Carson when Johnny Carson was on vacation. She had done some fantastic things, but right in the middle of her success, she had a health crisis. See, what about us? You know, are we suffering? Do we have a so sad story? Not a story of victory, but a story of sadness, of excuses. We can, but you can also have more if you choose to. See, Johnnie Colemon would say, if you keep doing what you're doing, you'll keep getting what you get. And Einstein put it this way: to do the same thing and expect a different result, that's the definition of insanity. So you have to change how you approach it. But remember, almost every practitioner practitioner that stands here says, what is true for God is true for everyone here. Open your mind and be healed is based off of a biblical story. The time period is Jesus has just been crucified and now resurrected. And his followers are walking down the road of Emmaus talking about what had happened. They're shocked. They are confused. They just don't understand how they could have been in a situation where they believed in so much promise, yet it had ended in the death of Jesus. And just in the process of them rehearsing the history of this situation, they said Jesus appeared to them. Now, whether or not it was physical or not is purely up to you to decide how that necessarily happened. But the thing is this, they said their minds were opened from the experience. Even though the story has not changed, they have a total different perspective of the same story. See, in the Greek, the idea of opening your mind brings up the image of a child at the point that it is going through the birth canal. There's no turning back. The baby is coming. And that's the point of having your mind open. When your mind is open, you can't turn back. Same events, different interpretation. You know, Paul put it this way, don't be attached to the opinions of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Not changed from who you are into something else. That's not being transformed. Being transformed is like a caterpillar to a butterfly. You already are what you want to be. You don't have to change into anything else. We just evolve like a bud that's a rose that opens up into a full rose. But Johnnie Colemon says you have to do 3 things to open your mind. You have to cut the ties that bind you to your humanity, your heredity, and your circumstances. Cutting the ties to your humanity. We have to understand we are body, soul, and spirit. We are in the image and likeness of God. There is no separation between us and God unless we choose to perceive it as separation. And once there is separation, there will always be suffering. You are whole, perfect, and complete, created in the image of God. Johnnie Colemon puts it this way, you should ignore anything else but what is your perfection. It's all about focusing on the perfection of who each one of us are. Cut our ties that bind us about humanity. Cut our ties that bind us about heredity. If you go into any one of our paths, I'm sure you'll find somebody in my life that died of it, right? If you look for the bad news of why it's running in your family and plan how it's going to happen in your life, it probably will. But just Friday, I was listening to a physician who was talking about epigenetics, the difference to genetics. You know, we carry genetic history in each one of our bodies and our cells. But epigenetics is how the cells are actually turned on. And it is believed at this point that 80% of what is turned on in our genes is based and totally controlled by us. So you choose 20% of limitation if you choose. But I'm going to work as hard as I can for the 80% that I can control. Cutting the ties that bind us to our humanity, to our heredity, and our ties to our circumstances. Every message out there may tell you that you're not going to make it. But something about the truth that resides within you should let you know it is possible. And if you don't think it's possible, just ask yourself the question, has anybody overcome it? Then why not you? If it is possible for anyone, it is possible for each one of us. We cannot be deterred by our circumstances. We have to cut the ties that limit us. Back to Della, in the middle of her health crisis. She's laying in an emergency room, and they tell her, Della, 93% of the people with your condition, it is either fatal or they are limited for the rest of their life. She was well aware that her mother had died of this condition. She said, 93%? Can you find the 7% for me to talk to? See, this is the issue. Are you going to choose the 93% or the 7%? It is the difference of looking at the news every night and anticipating that all of this stuff is going to happen to you, or looking past the circumstances in the situation and saying, if it's good for anybody, it can be good for me. Della continues. She recovers in 2 weeks from brain surgery. And she goes and records the commercial that was at the peak of her career for Campbell Soup. See, but you have to choose the 7%. You have to open your mind to the possibility. It's all within our control. So have you planned for greatness, or have you planned for good enough? Plan for greatness. Visualize yourself as great, because what is in you is the eternal. It is God made manifest. Every time you look in the mirror, you should recognize and know that God decided to look like you. And that's a good thing. And because it's there, you have the power to overcome anything that you choose to overcome. Anything. We all have a story, and each of us gets to define great. My definition of greatness may not be yours, but I know what has happened in my life, and I know all things are possible to the one that believes. And so it is. And just knowing right now, knowing that all that is divine and perfect, and that everything that occurs works together for our good, I speak my word that we will all choose the 7% and prove, God, that the windows of heaven will